like to welcome you all to a Grantee panel today. This panel is going to talk about innovative ways to operationalize topic A and B concepts into your programming. And our first presenter today will be Anne Mosack, who I'm sure you all probably know very well. And Anne is the president CEO of Ascend. Then next we'll hear from Deborah Landis. And Deborah, excuse me, Deborah is with OK Inc. in Twinsburg, Ohio. And Deborah's an SRAE program developer and program liaison with 28 years experience in healthy relationship education, focusing on sexual risk avoidance. In addition, Ms. Landis coordinates partnerships for OK Inc. with school superintendents, principals, health teachers, and community organizations throughout Northeast Ohio. So thank you, Deborah, for being here with us today. Next, then we'll hear from Barbara Jean, and she serves as the Senior Program Manager of Be Strong International Incorporated. With over 8 years of experience in the nonprofit sector and 6 years overseeing SRAE programs, she served in various capacities during her career as a facilitator, a youth development coordinator, and a program specialist. Her master's degree in social work has enabled her to hone her skills and develop trauma-informed programming to serve disadvantaged youth and their families. Barbara Jean has successfully worked to ensure that the programs delivered effectively incorporate the A through F topics through incorporating continuous quality improvement as a key aspect in BSI's service delivery model. So with that, I will turn it over first to Anne. And thank you all for being here.
Welcome, everyone. Always a pleasure to be with all of you. I enjoyed Dr. Hong so much, and it's the one thing that just keeps going through my mind is, it's not about us and them, it's about us. And I love that attitude. So keeping in mind Dr. Hong's emphasis on listening to youth, and ensuring that they can actually hear us, we're going to take a closer look at the A through F topics through this whole training. Today, we're going to look a little bit as we kick off the training, we're going to look at the program components and the topics A and B. So we'll just be concentrating on 2 topics every day, and today is A and B. And I am very aware that many of you are familiar with the A through F topics, but some of you are brand new grantees. So I hope this will be a very helpful session to you, all of these sessions. But I think we can all agree that, in an ever-changing culture, we can always learn more about adolescence and the complicated issue of teen sex, and it is complicated. So we will review some general points about topic A and B, and then take a little bit of a deeper dive into why these topics are important to adolescent development and thriving. And then I'm very excited that I will be then handing over the presentation to 2 very creative and wonderful and experienced SRA educators. And they're going to share some ideas on how they actually operationalize these topics with the youth that they serve. So this slide says, sex is always about more than sex. And I've said that many times, and people say, well, what does that mean? Well, what we're going to see is that the legislative guidance that has been enacted for SRAE education, it actually helps us to recognize that very fact, that teen sex and sexuality must be discussed in the context of life impact, right? it needs to go beyond simply talking about puberty and reproductive anatomy, STIs and STDs and pregnancy. And those things are all important, and they're pretty basic to sex education. But SRA education and the legislation that guides it creates a broader conversation about the impact of teen sex found in the context of SRA's holistic approach toward optimal health and thriving. So we're going to see that the legislative language actually demonstrates that holistic view in the topics, that sex is always about more than sex. Next slide, please. So a good starting point is to really understand the optimal health approach. And as you can see from the graphic that we have here, it's a pretty simple graphic, but understanding, the criteria of SRA, it will behoove us to understand the congressional intent and purpose of SRAE funding toward moving youth toward optimal health through risk elimination. And, there's a quote here, and I'm not going to read it. I know that Dr. Hong actually referred to it also, and talks about that balance, that holistic balance that we really need between the physical, the emotional, the social, the spiritual, and intellectual health. And very important. Now, another, important fact to keep in mind as we look at SRAE education is that the CDC advises what? It says the most reliable way to avoid sexual risk is to delay the onset of sexual activity and to be in a long-term mutually monogamous relationship with an uninfected partner. Most people will translate that also to mean marriage. So we're going to look now at how the topics A through F actually help to reinforce, as that little diagram shows, helping to maintain those who are not at risk. We want them to maintain that status. And then to increase movement from high risk to low risk to no risk for those who are engaged in sex as a teen. And the optimal health model, and this is very important, it measures success by the degree of movement away from risk. And incrementalism, as we know, that can be an important part of achieving behavioral change. We don't change overnight, but we need to recognize and celebrate incrementally when we move even from high risk to low risk, hopefully with the goal of no risk. So next slide, please. Now, on this slide, you're going to see that this is Erikson's very famous stages of development, of human development. And you can see that the topics that are designed that we're going to be addressing are areas of adolescent development that will empower youth with personal agency meaning their self-efficacy and thriving toward successfully moving toward adulthood. So the topics are intentional, and they cover a variety of those crucial areas of development and messaging that is important to healthy adolescent development. So we're right there at that stage of the adolescence. They're coming out of lower school age and they're moving. And what is our role? We're helping them along on that journey toward young adulthood with very crucial and important information. So next slide. So one of the things we do need to just look at briefly, and we're not going to look at this every day, so but just really talk today about the components of the programs that we're involved with. And the legislative requirement is that we must ensure that there is an unambiguous and primary emphasis and context for each topic and that is a message to youth that normalizes the optimal health behavior of avoiding non-marital sexual activity. So let's break it down a bit, remembering that fact that language, especially legislative language, is very intentional. What does unambiguous mean? Well, if you look at just the general, dictionary definition, unambiguous means not given to more than one interpretation. That means we're not giving a mixed message, but it must be clear in our communication that our focus is on optimal health and risk elimination for all youth. This particular component also emphasizes that we need to give a primary emphasis and context for each topic, right? So all topics are to be covered and with priority, and also in the context. And what's a context but a frame of reference of normalizing the avoidance of non-marital sexual activity as a desired norm. So this is not selective. We can't say, oh, I don't feel like covering that topic today. Actually, our requirement is to cover them all, and to cover them all with equal emphasis. So we can't be selective. And then if you want to just talk about a norm, it's very encouraging when you look at the YRBS survey results. And what do we find? That the majority of youth who are 15 to 17 years old are not having sex. And that's what we are about. We are about reinforcing that norm. And then to be medically accurate and complete. I think we all have a pretty good idea of what medical accuracy is. I know that many organizations have medical personnel that review their curriculum. I know that FISBE actually offers that service to make sure that we're providing, information that's peer reviewed, educational. It's in publications that are recognized for these matters of health and wellness. And then what do we mean by the word complete? Well, complete refers to information that, again, is not selective or presented in a manner that exaggerates or underemphasizes important medical facts that are pertinent to health. And then to be age appropriate. I know I'm rushing through these, but we have a lot to cover. So an age appropriate, of course, we understand that that's based on the cognitive development for the age group, not on the experience of a subgroup in that age group. And then D, our programs need to be based on adolescent learning and development theories for the age group that's receiving the education. And I can't emphasize this enough. This is so important because, well, we'll talk about it, but you can ask your publisher of your curriculum, what was your theoretical framework when you created this curriculum? Because your theoretical framework will actually reveal what you believe or understand about the youth you serve. Are they using the possible selves theory, resilience theory, social learning theory? They're probably using a lot of theories, but knowing that is extremely helpful in, delivering with authenticity the youth that you're serving. So in addition, I would advocate too, understanding maybe the psychosocial stage of development of the youth, because that stage of development is really going to impact, like, how are they going to process what's being taught? We know that adolescence is a time where they're really into trying to achieve what they call ego identity. Who am I? That sense of self. And so that's how they're going to hear that message that you bring. How's that going to impact them? Very important things that we know and that we need to know and kind of do a deeper dive in for effectiveness. And then finally, to be culturally appropriate and linguistically appropriate, okay? Recognizing the experiences of youth from diverse communities, backgrounds, and experiences. It's very important to and helpful to maybe interface with gatekeepers to assess the target population that you're going to serve. What are the family and the social backgrounds? What is the lived experiences of the youth in this community, of the community that you're in? So attention to this component definitely will increase what relevancy and needed resonation that really becomes effective in teaching students. Next slide, please. So today, looking at the first A, the holistic and individual and societal benefits associated with personal responsibility, self-regulation, goal setting, healthy decision-making, and focus on the future. We're going to hear those words over and over again. But let's look a little bit closer at, what does holistic really mean? I love this definition. It's really the holism is a philosophy that means that you cannot talk about the part without discussing the intimate interconnectedness to the whole. So, again, the quote that we read about, a person's physical, mental, social health, and all of those things are enhanced by the benefits of personal responsibility and self-regulation, et cetera. So now for the student, what does that mean? When you're talking about the whole holistic benefits to society, what I like to think, I love this. Kate, the message becomes, we need you. You are valuable. You're a valuable part of the human family. We want you to succeed and thrive. We need you, right? And this is especially important for students who do not have the benefit of support or connectedness on a personal level. And please, I'm just going to end with this really quickly. Don't underestimate the power of goal setting and having a plan for students, showing them that pathway. That was actually the tagline of the training, creating pathways. And it came, a colleague shared with me once, and she served almost exclusively foster children. And she said, every time I went into the class, the very first thing that they said, and they raised their hands and were very animated, what's the plan? What are we going to do today? What's going to happen? And she said she heard that so many times, she realized they need a plan. They want a sense of structure. Because they're living in chaotic and sometimes unstable environments. So sharing how to set a goal, how to make a plan, it may mean more than you think, and it can be very helpful to youth, especially to vulnerable youth. So I'm going to end there. Those are a few comments I wanted to bring about the components of our programs and topics A. And we're going to examine B here in a few moments, but it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Barbara Jean. She's going to share with us a grantee from Miami, Florida, and it's Be Strong International. So Barbara, tell us how you operationalize A.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Here at Be Strong, we have what we call the Be Strong lifestyle model that we share with youth and adults that participate in our program. And this model is our way of sharing a holistic view and a holistic approach to helping individuals transform areas in their life that they may be broken in or that they're experiencing challenges to become whole in those areas. And as a social worker, I think it's extremely important to instill empowerment and also to provide adults and youth alike the opportunity to discover who they are and to identify what those areas are that may be interfering with them achieving their goals. So again, the essence of our organization is to help individuals identify negative patterns, whether it be from their family history or maybe from individual choices that they are constantly repeating. And we want to help them develop new patterns of thinking and behaving that can improve their personal choices and family relationships. So one of the things that we were able to put together we have a Be Strong lifestyle planner and journal that we created for our youth. And in this journal, it is a way that they can personalize the benefits of personal responsibility, the benefits of self-regulation and goal setting, and even healthy decision making. And it allows them to really focus on the future. I actually have a copy of the journal right here. I don't know if you can see it, but we really wanted it to be cute and youth friendly. And if you open it, inside the journal, it has inspirational quotes, it has explanations on just maybe different challenges that youth may be experiencing, but then it also has games, and it has, you know, coloring where they can do like some adult coloring in here. And in the end of every section, it leaves them off with a challenge to maybe do something, right? Where it can not only impact you, but the person beside you. Maybe it's, you know, really think of something or someone that inspired you or that you want to thank, and actually like go say something to them, right? And I think that with this, they're able to really not only learn, but kind of like see within themselves and to say, this is what I would like to achieve. And this is actually how I'm going to achieve it. And I can actually go back in here and review what I've written, because when we're not there, we wanted to kind of leave them with a reminder that they can continue to move forward and achieve their goals in our absence. So this is kind of like our way of helping them have that holistic view where they can write their physical goals down here, mental activities and exercises in here as well. And it's cute. It's beautiful. We teach them about gratitude, and we give definitions for those things as well, because gratitude is an emotional aspect, and it's just recognizing what your blessings are in every possible situation. And a lot of the youth that we serve, sometimes they come from very tough neighborhoods, like the ones that I grew up in, and they may not have access to a lot of the things that more affluent neighborhoods have. So we really want them to see that regardless of where you are, and, you know, yes, you know, we have different challenges that we experience, that there are no limits to what you can achieve.
Wow, that's great. You know, what you said there, Barbara, too, about it being personal. If you recall, Dr. Hong talked about how this is an individual journey, right? Everybody's going to be reaching success in a different way. So you can see how that journal becomes theirs. So great point, great idea. All right, and now we are going to hear from Deborah Landis from Operation Keepsake, OK Inc., located in Twinsburg, Ohio.
Thank you, Mary Ann, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me a few minutes to share a little bit about our project at OK Inc. called The Big Idea. The Big Idea was originally designed for youth in the juvenile justice system, but we quickly realized that this project actually resonates with all youth. So we were very excited about that. The Big Idea project actually gives youth the opportunity to develop entrepreneurial skills as well as life skills, these life skills that are identified in the A through F standards, specifically A and B. So the project is going to give them the opportunity to set personal goals, understand self-regulation, personal responsibility, and how to make healthy decisions. Now, to kick off the Big Idea, we actually take photographs of abandoned buildings. I'm going to hold an example up. Abandoned buildings and failed businesses within the community. We then divide the students into working groups or teams. We share the photos of the abandoned buildings and failed businesses, and we ask the students to select a building or a failed business, and we ask them to restore it and rejuvenate it with a business plan. After the team select their photo, we ask them, what potential do you see for this building or this business? Can you identify a specific need within your community that this idea can fulfill? Now, this is really fun because I'd like to just share some of the ideas that some of our students have come up with. They've come up with the idea of developing a restaurant, and it's usually culturally based. Barbershops, unique toy stores, candy stores, food trucks, and even community centers. So just a variety of ideas. And our team is always surprised, pleasantly surprised, because the youth really do enjoy coming up with these ideas. They begin to formulate a vision for how the buildings or the businesses can be both restored and rejuvenated. Now, the Big Idea project actually consists of a series of modules. The first module is goal setting, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. But some of the other modules include, we have the students come up with writing a mission statement, designing a logo, and coming up with a slogan. Figuring out, do we need any equipment, especially for if it's a restaurant? Creating a marketing plan, and also developing a financial plan. How are we going to get money to do this project? How will we raise our funding? Now, after the students complete each module, they then are given the opportunity for personal reflection. And so, for example, the first module is goal setting. So they come up with what the goals are for their business. And then upon the personal reflection, this is now where they have the opportunity to set their own personal goals. And so as Dr. Hong and Marianne and Barbara Jean all talked about the importance of them really taking ownership of what some of their goals are. And it gives us the opportunity to work with them on developing first short-term goals and then long-term goals, all those little steps so they can build confidence to reach that long-term goal. Now, throughout this process, we are helping the students to realize and the value and the importance of, first of all, setting those personal goals. Where do they want to go with their life? Helping them discover how these small little baby steps, short-term goals, could eventually get them to that long-term dream. Also, the importance of self-regulation. This is really big, as you can imagine. Learning how to manage their thoughts and feelings. Remember, they're in a group, they're in a team, and they've got to come up with a mission statement, a logo design, a product idea. And so it can get pretty heated, as you can all well imagine. And so the youth really do have to realize, okay, they've got to hone in those emotions. They've got to allow other people to speak. They've got to improve their listening skills and really manage those thoughts and those feelings so that they can come to a consensus as a group. They also are starting to learn the value of personal responsibility. Look, they're part of a team. They've got to finish this project within a certain time constraint, and they don't want to let their team down, quite frankly. So they've got to complete their part of the project. Now, as the youth are working through the modules, we are helping them to realize that just like an abandoned building or a failed business can be restored and rejuvenated, guess what? So can their lives and their futures.
Well, thank you, Deborah. I'm sorry, I thought you were through.
Oh, no, just one other thought. I'm almost there. One other thought, Marianne. So as we all know, as you all know, Some youth feel that they are indeed abandoned, just like those buildings. They've been abandoned, some of them by their families, some by their friends or their communities. And they believe that they are failures. While learning these new skills, they are gaining confidence as they discover that they are not abandoned and that there are indeed people that do care for them. And we're going to talk a little bit more in a few minutes about topic B. Thank you.
Okay. I can kind of imagine some of those group discussions, and they have to be fun. I love the barbershop idea, and I also like the candy store idea, and I'm not surprised that students would come up with those.
Yes.
So really great. So obviously, it looks like you're really, operationalizing the concepts of A by using their experiences in those small groups and then developing that as a launch pad then to talk about the very themes that you want to. So very interesting. Great discussion there and fun ideas. So let's move now to the required topic B, the advantage of refraining from non-marital sexual activity in order to improve the future prospects and physical and emotional health of youth. So this seems pretty straightforward, but it does help to kind of unpack some of the language again. So what are we talking about when we say non-marital? Well, non-marital implies that you're engaging in sexual activity without the advantages and the boundaries, the commitment, the support that a healthy marriage can provide in terms of increasing physical, emotional health for individuals and children. Now, remember, we're saying a healthy marriage. We're not saying that is the case in every single marriage, but we're painting a picture here of what a healthy marriage would look like. So we'll be sharing, some of the components of a healthy marriage relationship, trust and respect and honesty. And that really can translate into greater emotional and physical and often economic security. And then, in terms of non-marital sexual activity, we need to also be emphasizing what does that look like in terms of, having multiple partners. We know that is the number one predictor of acquiring an STD, according to the CDC. The CDC also tells us that STD is an epidemic, and the burden of that is really falling into that youth category, the 15 to 24-year-olds. I believe it's in some instances 65% of some of the STDs. So it's important that we look at non-marital sexual activity in that regard, especially in regards to multiple partners. And then it's also important to understand when we're talking about non-marital sexual activity that increased early sexual activity among teens, the social science shows us it's associated with a number of negative psychosocial, emotional, and physical outcomes like depression, the likelihood of being involved with other risk behaviors, increased sexual and abuse and victimization, less attachment to parents, caregivers, trusted adults, schools, faith communities, lower self-efficacy and self-regulation. So there are a lot of reasons for helping youth to connect the dots to the health and well-being by avoiding sexual risk. And it can empower them for increased benefits, right? Including even relationship satisfaction. So SRA education focuses on sexual delay, preferably until marriage. Why? Because eliminating the risk of negative consequences for youth translates into the possibility of healthier adults and families and ultimately a healthier society. So we are greatly motivated to follow what social science has established in this regard and support optimal health as a desired outcome, with the understanding that every incremental step toward that goal is really a success. Remember, we looked at that optimal health diagram, and it measures success by moving the amount of movement toward no risk status. All right, so let's go back now, and we will hear from Barbara regarding topic B and how you operationalize that. Barbara?
Thank you again, Mary Ann. And I wanted to share a brief story really quick because I was able to go to my former middle school to provide some of the services that we provide to the youth. And upon me walking to the office, I ended up bumping into my 7th grade math teacher. And I was so excited to see her, but she had no clue who I was until I told her my name. And once I shared my name with her, she said, "Hold on, stay right there, don't move." I was a little concerned. I'm like, what did I do in middle school that I'm now going to get punished for? But she ended up coming to me with my 8th grade math teacher. And they said that they were just talking about me. And it had been 14 years since I stepped foot in that middle school. So I was a little confused as to why. And they mentioned that from 7th grade to 8th grade, I showed the greatest improvement in one of our standardized math tests for the state. And, you know, I didn't realize until I left, like I started thinking why, right? I didn't take any extra tutoring. I didn't do anything to my knowledge that was different. But when I thought about it, 7th grade, I was making a lot of bad choices. I was skipping school, guys. Like my mom would drop me off. We'd go to a friend's house across the street and just spend the day there. And it was a really tough time for me. Because my parents, they were never married, but they lived together and they separated at the time. And we just had so much freedom. And I just started like doing whatever I wanted because that 2-parent structure was no longer there. And I think that's what makes the work that we do even more honorable, because we allow youth who are going through difficult things, not only when it comes to their social life, but within their families, and even within their bodies and all of the changes that they're experiencing, all during one pivotal time. So through our services, we're able to serve youth from the age of 10. And we provide services as they matriculate into middle school. We teach them age-appropriate healthy relationship education, and we also introduce them into emotional resiliency strategies, financial literacy. We provide them with leadership skills, and we help them identify what is their purpose. And if they don't know, then that's okay, because I'm 30 and I'm still figuring it out. So I think we have one program in particular, GEMS, and that one has really been special for me because I had a great time helping to set it up, and we have great team members actually leading it, but we are able to bring in guest speakers to work with a more intimate group of participants and really kind of guide them through that emotional resiliency journey. And they're sometimes really big key stakeholders within our community that are able to come in and share like, hey, like I once was where you are now, and this is what I've been through. These are my challenges, and this is what I did to overcome them. And we're also able to allow graduates to come into our programs and act as mentors for youth, because I think sometimes they really do need that connection. I come from a home, I didn't see marriage or a healthy marriage maybe till I was 18 years old. Marriage was not something that was spoken about in my home. My parents never told me whether they were married or not. I figured it out as I was older. Like, okay, well, this was not, a marriage. But I mean, they did what they could together to help make things work for us as best as they could. I didn't realize I was poor until I was older too. So it was just a lot of not knowing and sheltering that my family did. And I think, I saw something in the comments where it says, I wish marriage actually got rid of all the risk. Me too. But I think one of the things that's important about the work is that we help we help individuals see what a healthy marriage looks like, right? Because just because someone gets married, a ring is not a cure to a lot of the challenges that we face. I think once I got married, I realized the areas that I needed help in therapy and more, because now I'm open, or I'm sharing my life in a way with someone that I've never had before. So definitely allowing you to see the benefits of marriage, but also, this is what a healthy marriage looks like. Because a lot of the students, if they're from the neighborhood that I grew up in, their parents are living together, not married, and they might come from an immigrant family, as mine was. So it's definitely a different demographic that we serve here. And we're now introducing them to something that maybe not the norm for the culture that they're a part of. So it's always amazing just to kind of allow the examples to come in and show them something that, oh, wow, like this is possible for me, right? It's possible, but it's possible for me.
All right. So thank you, Barbara. And thank you for just revealing your heart there, your experience. And it's very evident to me anyway, the passion that you bring in to the classroom. So very, very, very inspiring. Thank you. All right, Deborah, let's move on. And I bet we're going to hear a little more about the big idea here.
A little more about the big idea. So welcome back.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mary Ann. And that was awesome, Barbara Jean. Thank you. So one of the modules, I'm going to go back to the modules for a moment. One of the modules that we take the students through is called the SWOT analysis. Now, many of you may know, you probably know, that this is a tool that's used to evaluate a business plan. So you look for, okay, what are the strengths of my business? What are the weaknesses? What are our opportunities? And what are the threats that we might face? So in the students' personal reflections, we have the students actually do a SWOT analysis on their own life. So we begin with the strengths. So we ask the students, what are your strengths? And it's very interesting because many students know what their strengths are. So immediately they know what those are, but so many don't. So we try to really show every student you do have strengths, and so we ask them, maybe you're good at art or music or technology. And also, what do other people tell you that you're good at? So we really have them reflect on that, and we don't let them move past there until they come up with some strengths. And then we talk a little bit about the weaknesses. Now we don't focus on these. We just want them to be aware of their weaknesses so that they don't choose a pathway that would require them to use that gift or talent that maybe perhaps they don't have. Then we look at the opportunities. Now, this is where we have them reflect on, okay, once you graduate from high school, what next? Perhaps they have an opportunity to go into a trade school. Perhaps it's college. For many students, it's joining the military. But what is that next step? Once you graduate from high school, what are your opportunities? And we have them write those down and actually think that through. And then here's the important thing. It's the threats, or as Doctor said this afternoon, the barriers. What are the threats in your life? This could be anything that would adversely affect their future dreams, their future success. Like maybe for some of them, it's drugs and alcohol. For others, it may be an abusive relationship. And the main one here for us is the non-marital sexual activity. We know that this can compromise their future success and their future dreams. And we know, Mary Ann just covered the optimal health model. We know that non-marital sexual activity can absolutely compromise their physical and emotional health. We want our students to be free of the disadvantages that unhealthy choices could lead them into. And here's where we then talk about the advantages that they have for their life, for their future, for their dreams from non-marital sexual activity. So we want them to know the advantages. Now, if they have already made some unhealthy choices, we want to help them find new pathways. Their past failures do not have to define their future. And we drum that home. We want to give them hope, as Doctor said, not wishful thinking. Clear pathways. Now, upon completion of the Big Idea business plan, the teams now have the opportunity to present them to a panel. The panel is made up of community leaders and stakeholders. We like to call our panel the cheerleaders. And this is much like you'd see on the TV show Shark Tank. So the panel gives feedbacks. The panel, the cheerleaders, if you will, give positive critique. They oftentimes praise the youth for, first of all, working as a team and then completing the project. And they praise them for their creativity, for the great big idea. This gives students the opportunity to have very positive interactions with adults. Our panel reinforces and encourages these youth to press on, keep going, move forward, look to your future. And just like the abandoned buildings and failed businesses, our youth can indeed be restored and rejuvenated. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you to the panel. And I guess I'm going to hand it back over to our moderator, Scott Roby.
Great. Thank you all so very much. So it's great information that you shared. Want to remind everybody that this is your opportunity. If you would, please drop your questions into the chat and we'll work to field those to our presenters as they come in. So starting off, Deborah, obviously there's a lot of chatter around this big idea and a couple of questions related to that. Number one is how much time is needed to pull off a project like this? And then, well, you can respond to that first and then we'll go to the next question, please.
Sure. And that is such a great question. The quick answer is as much time as you can get, but all kidding aside, we typically present our big idea during our summer programming because we have a little more flexibility with our community partners and they will give us more time. Ideally, it would be great to get a solid week, so 5 consecutive days, and I would say 4 hours a day. Anything beyond that, it can be a lot for the students. But 4 hours is a nice chunk of time to keep them moving and easily transition from module to module. But it would be ideal if you could get a solid week, 5 days.
Great, thanks. Along with that, then, so what happens next to the big idea business plans?
So that's also a great question because we would love the opportunity to now take that big idea and go to the next step. That's like a whole other funding opportunity, but wouldn't it be great? We always think, our team always talks about this. After we complete an event like this, a project like this, we think, okay, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could actually get some of the community leaders to actually take one of these ideas and actually try to make it happen? Like if we could get some funders, if we could get maybe some of the politicians or community stakeholders really involved to really help us implement the big idea. So in our mind, that would be the next step. We've not done that yet, but that's a great additional project.
Can we have the next slide? I do want to just mention briefly that these slides that you see summarizing the points for A and B are going to be available to you on the exchange also, so that you can capture kind of the outlines of what has been shared. But go keep on asking away.
Great, thanks. Yeah, when to your point, Deborah, someone shared a big idea that they had and said, have you thought about taking winners of the Shark Tank to the community and allowing them to get funding? So that goes right in line with what you were saying.
Awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I did forget to say one other thing. This reminded me, we do actually allow the panel, they actually do pick a winner and we do give them prizes. I forgot to mention that, but they'll pick best project. Nice. So it's very exciting for the students. They love it and they love the competition. But to then bring it to the community, whoever suggested that, that is an awesome idea. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much. Maybe we'll just do that.
There you go.
Yes,
Barbara Jean had a lot of chatter about the journal, and someone shared, if you didn't see it, someone shared the link to Be Strong International website, and it's bestrongintl.org. And in there, you can click on the shop tab and you can see all the options for the Be Strong Lifestyle Journal. So that would be your ability to get that resource. And then we had a question related to specifically, I think maybe topic A. It said, how do you deal with children that grew up in non-marital households or marriages and feel like it's okay to live with a boyfriend, and this is the way they're learning how to know each other before getting engaged, specifically when their own parents or relatives tend to live together? They may not see the need for PSS. How do we address these cases?
That's a big question.
That is a big question.
That's a very big question, because really it is the lived experience of many youth. And on its face, it seems plausible, reasonable. I'm getting to know this person. What's interesting is that the social science does not support it. It's cohabitation, really. And the likelihood of separating is much higher among cohabitating couples than it is with married couples. And so, when you look at it that way, you might say, oh, well, we found out we're not compatible. But when you're also living together and then have children, and now you're separating, that again becomes a consequence that is not just for the couple, for the two people experimenting or trying to get to know each other, but it now becomes collateral, damage. I don't mean that children are, collateral damage, but that there are significant consequences and fallout from that. So it's a big topic. But I think also, because I think what we need to do is not deny what social science tells us, and we don't need to nullify the message about the value and benefits of a married relationship just because of the lived experience of folks. We recognize it, but what are we always doing? We're trying to move them on to create pathways that could yield better outcomes.
And I definitely agree, Marianne, just because I come from, a home where my parents were together and they weren't married. I think it gave me an example of, okay, what not to do. I kind of learned the opposite. Like, okay, I see this is not what I want for myself, just because it was not a fun thing to grow up in. We're not even gonna go there. But it really did help me once I went through my crazy phase, right? Before I wasn't able to address certain areas that I was broken in, but once I was able to see healthy relationships and realize that not only can I focus on what not to do, but I also have an example of what to do, then it made it a little easier for me to kind of set my path of, okay, well, this is the kind of relationship I want. These are the boundaries that I'm going to set for myself. These are the relationships that I'm going to end, right now, because they're not helping me get to where I want to be. So I'm married. I've been married for 7 years in September. And I was the first one in my family, it's not like a common thing. So it really gave me the opportunity to see what I shouldn't do and what I should aim for, and not accept or settle for certain things just because I want to be loved, because we all have that desire, right?
That's really good. Once again, you're bringing your own experience. And I love that idea where you talked about the contrast. See, that's it. If this is all I know, is this all I know, or are we actually moving toward, a more productive or a more positive pathway? And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that for every youth, every single one of the students we serve. Sorry, Scott. I think
that's fine. Appreciate it. Yeah. So we have another one to Deborah. Is the big idea in conjunction with other curricula?
Well, that is a great question. And we have our regular represent curriculum that we do in high school. It's a 5-day curriculum, and we have a middle school curriculum, 5th grade through 8th, called Your Future on the Line. But this particular curriculum that we've created, the big idea, we incorporate the ideas from our middle school and high school within the big idea in the modules, when we take them through the modules. But the big idea is its own project that we developed to work with our community partners during the summer, because we just feel it gives us that extra layer, if that makes sense. And many of the students that we work with in the summer, they have us during the school year, both in middle school and high school. So we see many of these students actually throughout the entire year. We work with them in their school setting, and then we see them again in the summer in their community, in their community programs. Like, for example, the Boys and Girls Club, and we have several others. But that summer programming just gives us that additional time. We can do that, add that additional layer to what we're already doing foundationally, if that makes sense. So this is its own project.
Sorry, that little mute button gets me every time. Thank you very much. Final question, and just thinking about, again, Barbara, you've been so gracious in sharing your own perspective. The question was, what was it for you that encouraged you to get married?
I actually messaged Catherine back. I had a friend and we fell in love. And that was it. We fell in love.
Very good. Well, thank you all so much for your question. And thank you to our panelists for such an excellent explanation of topics A and B. We really appreciate it. Many of you have asked about contact information. So just want to remind you that it is here on the screen. And so please just snap a photo with your camera, and that way you can capture their contact information if you want to reach out after the webinar. So thank you again. And with that, we will see you all in the next session.